vote for me. That's all I'm saying.
We haven't even started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hash Rugby chat. Tonight we'll be talking predominantly about the Super Rugby World Cup warm-ups, and obviously going to be number one, as Wales have done. But before that, we'll have a few little chat about Shoot Shield and Currie Cup as they're ongoing as well. Just to make sure that Archman feels uncomfortable on the show, because yes, he's joining me. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Just shot out from a public meeting about our development of our local sports ground. So that's quite exciting for us, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And also,
I thought it was maybe, look, Ashwin, I saw your hat, your cap. I saw the poster behind you. I thought maybe you were at a Blues supporters support group.
Now, every time I go to a game, I'm at a support group.
Yeah. So you kind of walk in there and you go, hi,
my name's Ashwin. I'm a Blues supporter.
I'm a Blues supporter. Hi, Ashwin.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, we've been joined by John O'Connor. Long time no talk. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm about to have a podcast, a YouTube broadcast, and pudding and coffee at the same time. I mean, can it get any better?
Can it get? Well, I've got hot Milo rather than coffee, but there you go. Yeah, absolutely.
Ice cream.
And hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul. So thank you everyone for joining us. So just breeze over a couple of news items first. The Shoot Shield reaches its finals, and Sydney University will take on Wongaroa, which Hugh tells me Warringah. There we go. Brilliant.
Yep.
We've got semi-local. In the final, that's first versus third. Hugh will be giving us a big write-up of that, as he's been doing for every round of the Shoot Shield. So check that out on DrivingMaul.com. I'm backing Sydney University to win that one, by the way. But predictions will come out later in the week. And then,
well, it depends whether Sydney select a whole lot of Fijians, because I think that's the only way Australian teams win a game.
Oh dearie me, having a pop. Sydney University gets all the Waratahs players playing for them for some reason. And then we have the Currie Cup, and I'll be honest, I'm a bit surprised. I'm very surprised and impressed with how the Gricas have gone heading into the final round, topping the table. That's got to be a bit of a shock, as they're not a Super Rugby or professional or Pro 14 province, are they, John?
No, they're not, but they are a feeder into the Cheetahs. So they were, let's put it this way, they were a feeder into the Cheetahs when they were part of Super Rugby. I'm not sure now with the Pro 14 if that still holds. But certainly Grick was, have produced some Springboks, very famously one in the 70s called Manikis Roo, who was played at centre. So, Grick was got a long 100-plus year history of playing rugby, and that province is where Kimberley is found. That's the centre of Griqua's rugby, and Kimberley is, of course, the famous place with all the diamonds and stuff like that.
They're rich.
Plenty of sponsors. Yeah, plenty of sponsors. They should be rolling in it. They should have the best players. They should have a Springbok team. So they have. They've come top of the log.
Well, this is Western Province have been the side that dominated Currie Cup over the past couple of years. So they've dropped down into fifth this year. So there's one more round of games to go, but we'll see. So, but Tafel Lager, worth a drink, or is that one of the or one to avoid, John?
Tafel, Tafel.
Yep.
Yeah, it's worth a go.
So that's the Gricas sponsor. So they're Tafel Lager Gricas this year. So not only. If we compared to Toyota Free State, Xerox Golden Lions, Cell C Sharks, DHL, Vodafone, Phakisa, Phakisa Pumas, whoever they are, I've got to say, Gricas, not only are they top of the table, but they've got the best sponsor as well. In fact, they've got a beer sponsor.
Oh yeah.
So just to say, you said that the Gricas used to sort of feed into the Cheetahs, but interesting enough, so they're not feeding into the Cheetahs anymore. And then basically what the area that would be the Cheetahs, the Free State, has come second on the log as well. So obviously there's a bit of strength around that area.
Yeah, you've got to think of it in terms of ITM Cup teams, right, in New Zealand.
Yes.
So So, for instance, Northland and and Auckland may make up the Blues. So, Griquas and Free State made up the Cheetahs.
Right.
Something similar like that. There only really was one province that had no real input from anywhere else, and that was the Sharks. So their Curry Cup team was pretty much minus Springboks. Minus Springboks might be on duty for whatever tournament they're playing in at that time. When they play the Curry Cup, it's basically their Super Rugby squad.
And so is the Curry Cup split like the IT or the Mitre 10 Cup now in terms of a premiership and championship with sort of a top level and a bottom level and promotion relegation between them?
What day is it today?
What year are we in?
They don't have crossover games the same way that my
change thing. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Paul. Please go for it.
So I was going to say, they don't have crossover games in the same way that Mitre 10 Cup do. Nominally, there's promotion relegation, but it never seems to happen, unless it's the Kings who get relegated or promoted, depending on what mood they're in.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest, I don't think that the vast majority of South African rugby unions want the Kings to succeed, simply because that would be an outlet for the incredible pool of black talent that comes out of that area. So that's the heartland of black African rugby, is around the Kings, and they have been looted and pillaged for all manner of rugby players. The greatest example of which would be Sia Kolisi, who is a player from that area, raised in that area, and is, of course, Stormers, Western Province, and Springbok captain.
So what sort of geographical landscape does the Kings actually encapsulate?
So the area around Port Elizabeth and East London. So that's rough. Let's say if you were to go along the coast between Cape Town and Durban, it's roughly halfway between the two.
Yep. Right. So it's not that I've ever been, but I got an understanding.
So that's the heartland of the Xhosa people, right?
Yes. Yep.
And when you head up towards Durban, where the Sharks are, that's the heartland of the Zulu people. And the Xhosa people are sort of midway between the Zulus and the Western Cape. Now, it's a very much a generalization, but yes, that's the heartland of both black passion for rugby and cricket. So Mackay and Tini came out of that area as well.
Ah, right. Okay. You know, looking at the teams that are up there, Premiership, Championship, and you look at the Championship and you see the Griffins, and it's sort of like, just for that Harry Potter element, you want to see them in the Premiership. Just...
There's clearly some ones that have had their names for years, like Griquas and the Bulls. Other ones you think look a little bit more recently made up. And it's kind of like, we need to come up with an animal or with a nickname, guys. Let's just make it up on the spot and come up with something. Some of them look a little bit, and I think that's happened in Mitre 10 Cup as well. Otago, the Spinebacks or something silly.
Razorbacks.
There we go.
It's a wild pig. This is why you go.
You're all over this.
All over it, mate. All over it. Yeah. Like a rash.
The other thing that happened is the Jaguares 15 entered the championship and they actually absolutely stormed it. 7 wins, 7 try bonus points. They topped the table on 35 points. The Griffins, who Ashwin's new favourite team, picked up 24 points. So in just 7 games, they gained an 11-point lead. Men versus boys.
So when we say the Jaguares, because I got the Pumas wrong and then got educated that it's not the Pumas from Argentina. Is the Jaguares an Argentinian team?
Yes.
It is, okay.
Yes.
And is this the first year that they're into the...
No, they were playing as now don't ask me what this word means, we'll Google it. The Welwitchias. WELWITSCHIA. Welwitchias is some term that was relevant to them, and they were playing in the Currie Cup. So
Okay.
to understand this, you need to go quite far back into the 60s, where South Africa sent one of the great rugby minds of that period of South African rugby over to Argentina to help them develop their rugby. So he was a man by the name of Isaac van Heerden, who famously coached what was then Natal, has now become the Sharks, and coached a beautiful brand of rugby. And South African rugby invested in Argentinian rugby and helped develop the sport within Argentina over a period of decades. So there've been very close ties between South Africa and Argentina.
Right,
So that's so to give them somewhere to compete outside of the normal season, they included them in the Currie Cup. So whereas the Griffins, for instance, are Northern Free State, so the Cheetahs are around Bloemfontein, which is the capital of the Free State province. The Griffins are the northern part of that province, and the Griquas are in quite close to that, are in the northern part of the Cape province. The team that comes from the Jaguares is actually a South American team, obviously minus all the players that are currently representing the Pumas. But it gives them an opportunity to develop those players and gives them a strong place to play below Super Rugby level.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of their players from that were playing for the Argentinian 15 in the Americas Rugby Championship before, where they played against the USA, Canada, Brazil, Chile, and Uruguay. So they've been. It's not like they've just appeared for this. They've been playing elsewhere as well.
Do you think that they'd ever let them get into the Premiership? Like, so they're going to finish top of the log in Championship. Do you think they would actually let them get in the Premiership? Fearful of the fact that they might end up with a Super Rugby type scenario?
I think they would, absolutely. And if they're good enough to win, good on them. I don't think that, by the way, I don't think the Jaguares have been given nearly enough credit in this country for what they've achieved in the years since they started in Super Rugby. They were poo-pooed at the start, and yet they have far more travel than anybody else. Because nobody thinks that every single away game for them is across an ocean. Mm-hmm. Whereas the away game for the Chiefs here in Hamilton could be 2 hours up the road at the Blues.
Yeah. Hour and a half. You can't have been listening to DrivingMaul too often then before you came on, because we used to talk about the Jaguares in terms of that concept, and we felt that the quality in the sides has been there. It's just a case of obviously one day they were going to get used to the travel factor, and it looks like they've sort of come to grips with how they can manage the travel factor to sort of be very, very obviously. Well, I can't put enough veries in there. Competitive. I mean, they were in the final, so. I mean, like, I think you're right. There's like the old mainstream media and people that aren't so aware. It's just like, look, they've had a very hard road to get up to speed. Yeah.
I mean, even they haven't had it quite as bad, but not far behind them are the Sunwolves. Because the Sunwolves, at least the Sunwolves travel north and south. So they don't have as much jet lag as the Aussies do. But half of the Sunwolves' home games are in Singapore. So their home games, half of their home games, they're still not in their own beds, in their own homes. Now that's
not only that.
And it's a 9-hour flight. It's a long way from Singapore to Japan. It's not close. It's still a 9-hour flight as well between those two places. It's not like it's close. Anyway, a couple of other things that's been going off. The top 14 kicks off this coming weekend, amazingly enough. So that's that nearly year-round competition in France is about to kick off, which just does my head in, the fact that they're already starting. So good luck to all the players there.
But you can run a year-round competition when you just go and get South Pacific players that you sign up to not release.
Well, dearie me.
Another shot fired. That's a
shot fired. Shots fired.
That is. I just want to point something out here before we get too judgmental of the French top 14.
Yep.
August in the Northern Hemisphere is the equivalent of February here.
Yes, but they keep going until June.
Super Rugby starts in February, and the Mitre 10 Cup is still running. So players who played Super Rugby and are not in the All Blacks are still playing, and players who played Super Rugby and played Mitre 10 Cup Rugby are still playing.
Yeah.
So it might not be the same competition, but they're still playing rugby.
True, they are. They are doing that. Josh was asking, have we talked about World Cup rankings and the Bledisloe Cup yet? No, we haven't. But we've got a few more rabbit holes to go down before we get there. And true, but the top 14 kicks off now in August, goes all the way through to June, which basically gives them July or a 5-week break between the end of the season and the beginning. Effectively, or maybe slightly long, maybe as much as up to sort of a maximum of 8 weeks. But it is a very long season up in France. I mean, one of the ways they deal with it is generally they don't mind losing away from home, so they play their first choice team at home, and they will they'll quite often rest players for away games. So, as you say, it might look like a long old season because it is being 14 teams. That's 26 games, plus you've got your European Champions Cup on top of that. You've got your playoffs on top of that as well. So it takes it to 29 plus your 8 plus 3 if you do well in the European Champions Cup, which becomes an awful lot of games. But as I say, they quite often rest players when they go away from home, which is how the player toll, or how they do sort of player welfare there historically, and they have bigger budgets, they have bigger squads, so they can afford to do it.
Well, let me ask you, Paul.
Yep.
Roughly, I hope everybody else is getting to see you because I can't for some reason. But
no, you're all good.
You're all good. Okay.
Yeah, everybody's all good on YouTube anyway.
Paul, do you know approximately how many games somebody who plays for France, how many games they're going to play approximately in a year, or how many games somebody who's in the All Blacks is going to play in a year?
In the All Blacks, so the All Blacks, it will be because they tend to have around about 14 Test matches, but they'll miss at least 2 of those. Plus, you've got your 16 games Super Rugby, which they have to miss 2 of. So you're looking at somewhere in the sort of mid 20s for an All Black. So 26, 28 kind of region.
And here's a crazy thing: the NFL generates way more money than rugby, in the many billions of dollars. If you are a wild card team and you win your wild card playoff match, and then you win the division, and then you win the conference, and then you play the Super Bowl, you'll play 20 games in a year.
Whoa, 20!
Well, I think the European ones are now capped something like 36 games per player maximum, which gives you an idea.
And if you are a top team and you didn't have to play a wild card game, your whole season will be 19 games if you go all the way to the Super Bowl. But the rest of the people who don't make the playoffs, they'll play 16 games in a year.
And the NFL is an amazing competition when you think about to look at, because they have a whole bunch of regulations in there as well. Like they're only allowed to change their jerseys once every 5 years. They don't put I think there's something about not having so many sponsors on the jerseys and all this kind of stuff, and yet they generate way more revenue than rugby teams that have up to sort of, I think Scarlet's had something like 20 sponsors on their jersey recently. And they change their jersey every year. And yet NFL teams that change their jersey once every 5 years make just as much money or make actually more money. And you got to say that some of this stuff is counterintuitive, but you do think that some of the rugby hasn't looked at the finances and the financing properly as to how this kind of works.
What they have fallen prey to, at least, is the yawning maw that is satellite television.
Mm-hmm.
Satellite sport needs programming. They're desperate for content. And what rugby made a big mistake in doing is saying, we'll supply you with hours and hours and hours of new content every week. Instead of what the NFL does, it starts in September. And at the moment, by the way, the fans are just gagging for it to start, right? They're in preseason at the moment. And it runs from September through to the first weekend in February, which is the Super Bowl. And then it's over. And then everybody waits with bated breath. I can't wait for it to start again.
And that's what we don't have with rugby. We have, I think there might have been one weekend this year when there wasn't any rugby or it was only minor competitions were on. There isn't that breathing space to create anticipation for a new season. It's always on the go.
And it's only real hardcore that get withdrawal symptoms when there's a weekend without rugby.
I know. By the time it gets to December, I'm so rugbyed out that I don't want to watch Northern Hemisphere games. I'm not interested. I need a break. I want to watch some cricket. I want to get away from rugby, and I want to wait until February and into March so that I can actually, I want to watch the game again.
The part of this issue is obviously around the fact that you've got sports channel, cable network channels, sports channels that need content. So basically, a lot of everything is now geared towards creating content. It doesn't. I mean, apart from it appears American sports aside in terms of like NFL, everything else seems to be trying to create and generate more and more content.
Oh, you look at baseball as like 140 odd game season. You're like, what?
How can you 62 games in the regular season? 162, and that's before the playoffs. So sometimes they're playing double headers. They're playing 2 games in one day.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's interesting. It's diluting your product, isn't it? I mean, what we're talking about here is that NFL's doing it right. They're creating that suspense. I can't think of the right words, but that
anticipation.
Yeah, exactly. And but every other sport is actually going around the dilution path of actually giving so much content. Everybody's going, I missed the game. Oh, bugger. Oh well, watch the next one.
And what is the number one most valuable sporting franchise in the world? It's not in the most popular sport in the world. It's not Real Madrid or Liverpool or Man United. The number one value, the Dallas Cowboys.
Dallas Cowboys.
And that's a Jerry.
You want to say Springer?
But if you ever heard him talk, this is Jerry. Jerry look it up for us. Jerry Jones, isn't it Jones?
That makes that sounds
Jerry,
right. Yep.
Jerry Jones.
Not from Jones.
He has not won a Super Bowl in 25 years. He hasn't even won a divisional title in 25 years, and he still has managed to turn that into so much wealth. Right.
And
it's the cheer.
There are a couple of things he's done. I mean, there are silly things like, they decided not to put a roof on the Dallas Cowboys stadium so God could watch his team, and they come up with little sayings like that, which people buy into. But he's also invested an awful lot of money in making the stadium experience of the Cowboys amazing. So they've I think they've got the largest big screen in the world. So it's like watching at home on your own screen. It's the same sort of resolution because it's such a big screen, even though you're in the stands and things like that. And that's where, as you say, that rugby in New Zealand especially, and I think South Africa as well, has lost the plot in the fact that they've put all this content on for the satellite channels, and they haven't worried about the fans in the stadiums, and they haven't spent all that money trying to trying to make the fan experience in the stadiums worth doing it, and that's why we're seeing. That's one of the reasons, anyway. We're seeing that crowds decreasing.
Well, I feel for the Sunwolves because I got a great sense this season that they were starting to climb upwards. And people forget, but I remember the Crusaders, the first, I don't know, 2-3 years,
2 years,
were rubbish.
uh-huh.
They were getting spanked, right?
Until they started buying Aucklanders, totally.
Oh, dear me, that broken record again.
There we go. There we go. Those blue underpants are showing, mate.
I'm wearing them on the outside.
Mr. Super Blue.
Mr. Blue, exactly.
No, look, I mean, it's interesting you say that. Crusader's actually not a bad one to select there because, as you said, the first 2 years they were basically bottom of the log, so to speak. And then even it's sort of that third year they won the title in the third year of Super Rugby, and it was sort of like halfway through the season it was looking like the first two seasons, and then something a switch flicked, and things have basically carried on from there. But they've sort of fallen, and they've also now starting to see where their product's becoming diluted. You know, the fervour that the Cantabrians, people of Christchurch followed the team, that started to sort of disappear as well. You're starting to see, at a smaller stadium now, where you'll be lucky if it's half full at certain times of the season. You'll hear the but you don't realise how cold it is. Well, we've got global warming, so surely it's warmed up since when you played at Lancaster Park. No, well, it's warmed up since Lancaster Park is my point, right? So, but how can you say it's cold now, but Lancaster Park was warmer? That doesn't make any sense. So, look, the reality is that there's a dilution there as well.
Let's also be honest that back in the 90s when Super Rugby started, games in New Zealand were in the afternoon.
But by the time when they were getting to...
And you had things like, I mean, look, the fans are so used to making the final, they don't bother going to quarterfinals anymore, and things like that. They wait for the final to get their tickets and things.
They'll wait for the final. In fact,
which is part of that dilution.
Yeah.
Some player news, because we seem to manage to get through half an hour before we even got to the main topic, which is fantastic. French lock Paul Gabrielis has been cited for a ruck clear-out, so he's in the same sort of situation as Scott Barrett, where he's going to have a hearing to see how much of the Rugby World Cup he may or may not miss. And we've also had Marcel Coetzee has been ruled out due to an ankle injury.
No, it's such a sad story.
Oh, sad story. So I thought you were going to say no, it wasn't. He wasn't. That's not the case. Yeah. So that's the second Rugby World Cup on the trot that he's been ruled out for through injuries.
He also, after the last Rugby World Cup, the last Test match he played was 2016. He went to Ulster, did his ACL, anterior cruciate ligament in the one knee in 2017. Did the other knee. No, he did it just after he got there. So 2016, he did the one cruciate ligament. 2017, he did the other knee, the other cruciate ligament, and almost gave up the game. And his selection into the Springbok squad after a really good season for Ulster was such a feel-good story. And now it's happened to him again.
So were you shaking your head at the fact that he's injured again, or unfortunately got another injury, or was it a silly circumstances that he got the ankle injury?
No, it's just one of those things, right?
Yeah.
But I just feel for him because he is to give you an idea of the type of person that Marcel Coetzee comes from, he came from a Afrikaans medium school on the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal. So that's kind of like saying he came from Raglan High School, right?
Right.
Unpopular, not known for producing provincial players either at Craven Week, which is the provincial schoolboy level, or international players. He wasn't selected to go to the Sharks Academy, but his parents paid for him to go. So rather than getting a scholarship, he chose to go to the Sharks Academy, where they're encouraged to study as well as play rugby. Mm-hmm. And when he finished school, the sort of 2 months between the end of year 13 exams and the start of the academy year in February. Everybody else, there's a tradition in South Africa, it's quite common, where you go away, you party at the end of school before you start university, you'll go different way. People travel all over the country and party, and they have beach parties and all sorts of things. He went to the gym, and he went to his uncle who owned a gym, and he trained his guts out for 2 months while everybody else was partying at the end of school. And when he arrived at the Sharks Academy, he was physically and focused so far ahead of everybody else that within a year he was given a scholarship. Within 2 years he was playing for the Sharks. That's the kind of player that he is, right? Unfashionable background, hardworking, dedicated, absolutely who you want in your squad. And he's just been blighted in the last 3 years with injuries.
Very sad.
So I was going to say, is there any point in having these warm-up games, or should the team just keep everyone wrapped in cotton wool in training and then just jump straight into Rugby World Cup?
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, aren't you? if you don't have any warm-up games, you're going to be undercooked before the World Cup, and if you do have warm-up games, there's a chance that somebody's going to get injured.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think the lesser of, well, it's probably not the correct saying to use, but the lesser of two evils is to play warm-up games.
Well, it only is okay to not play warm-up games if other teams are not playing warm-up games. Otherwise, they will steal them out from you.
Yep. And even in the NFL, they play warm-up games, and they hardly play any games at all. So yeah, I think we've had to have warm-up games. There is that just this situation where we're having players who are picking up disciplinary and much more upsetting injuries that mean they're missing game. I mean, Gareth Anscombe's one we talked about last week. We're talking about Marcel this week. It's a real shame these things are happening.
Yeah, but this is part of sport, right? We can say it's part of a contact sport, or let's call it, what did Heineke Meyer call it? A collision sport, right?
Yep.
Ballroom dancing is a contact sport. Rugby is a collision sport. But even in ballroom dancing, in any sport, you're going to have injuries, but especially in a collision sport, it's going to happen, right? You've got Damien McKenzie, you've got Marcel Coetzee, you've got Pocock, who's had tons of injuries. Mm-hmm. You're going to get these things, and this is where depth counts, right?
Yep.
It is. And what do you think of England and Argentina that have both named their 31 already players for the Rugby World Cup a month out, whereas teams like Wales and New Zealand are going to be sort of waiting until the last minute to name them. Which approach would you take? Do you like the idea they're actually put a stake in the ground now, but they could lose some more players, or do you think that way the players know who is going, or do you think you should keep the players guessing for a few more weeks?
What do you think, Ashwin?
Well, I think it's a horses for courses. Tell you the truth, I think if you're comfortable with the players that you've got and the players that you've chosen, there's no harm in actually going ahead and saying, okay, this is my squad that I'm taking to the World Cup, and we're going to work, and that's the combinations and everything that we're going to work on. In saying that, Argentina aside, I think England, I'm not. I think it's a provisional Rugby World Cup squad as opposed to a confirmed Rugby World Cup squad. But look, as I say, if it was a actual Rugby World Cup squad named 30 days out from a start of a tournament or however many days it is, look, it's horses for courses. So it can work because you've got a settled squad. You're now just working on combinations to make sure that everything's bedded down. Everybody knows the moves. Everybody knows the roles that they're playing, etc., etc. So it can work for you if you know what you're doing. If you know that that's the people that you want there.
I think it's the other way around, actually. I think it's actually the thing to do if you're not sure. So you look at the All Blacks, you look at Wales, you look at Ireland. A year ago, you'd name 25 or so of their World Cup squad quite comfortably, and probably even more. And you know who's going, barring injuries, obviously. And so the people in camp actually know who the 28 or so players are, and they know and the sort of the 4 or 5 guys who are jinking it out for a place understand who they are, and the guys who are the injury reserves but making sure they're up to speed know who they are, and everyone knows what the pecking order is. It's not really overly competitive. Whereas I think teams like England, perhaps South Africa to a degree, if you name it early, you're stopping some of the over fighting that you might get in, or over competitiveness you might get in the camp, where players are like, okay, we know 10 of the players who are going, but there's still 30 guys around fighting out for 20 places, and they're going hammer and tongs in training and perhaps overdoing it. And I think what Eddie Jones has done is he's gone, right, guys, I'm going to say who it is now so we can actually concentrate on combinations rather than players trying to outdo each other. Whereas I think that's where Eddie Jones has gone down. For the Pumas, I don't think they've got another warm-up game, so they've just said, right, look, warm-up game's done, here's our team. But I think South Africa could actually possibly do that, because at the moment, I'm not sure South Africa know, well, from the outside, it's hard to say who their best team is, because their so-called first choice and their so-called second choice teams have both been winning and both been doing really well. So yeah, for me, it is a horses for courses one, but I think, but the opposite way around to Arsenal is it for squads that are unsettled, it helps settle them down, whereas settled squads don't need to name yet because they know the players know their roles and who they are. And I think that's also part of this. World Cup rankings, Wales going number 1. Are you? How are you boys? Are you boys throwing it out and going, these World Cup rankings are rubbish? Wales haven't beaten New Zealand in forever. How can they be number 1? Or
I'm not too fussed about it, to tell you the truth. I mean, like, it's paperwork for my mind. It's not what happens on the field. Who cares, right? Obviously, it's nice to have the tag of number 1. Obviously, there's a lot of confused people around. I think it's not so much that Wales haven't played the All Blacks. That's the fact is that, well, hang on, the results have been very similar. I suppose the only difference being that Wales have been playing England and New Zealand. All Blacks have been playing what sort of like about a 6th or 7th placed Australia.
But it's only the results in the last week, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So
we got to realise that rankings aren't about last week. They're about the last sort of year or so.
Last 12 years. Yeah, 12 months. Sorry, 12 months, 12 years. Yeah.
And let's be honest, New Zealand have not been the best over the last 12 months.
Not arguing.
Or their best. Sorry, not necessarily. Sorry, they haven't been their best in the last 12 months.
Sorry, say that again. Say that again.
New Zealand hasn't been at their best for the last 12 months.
They haven't been at their best, but they've certainly been the best.
See, I'd rather John say it than me.
I'm sorry, mate. But if England play New Zealand in the last year 10 times, New Zealand are winning 8 of them.
Yeah, I was going to say
if Wales play in the last year New Zealand 10 times, Wales probably is not winning a game. If Ireland play New Zealand 10 times in the last year, Ireland is winning 1.
Ireland have a 50-50 record against New Zealand over the last, since the last Rugby World Cup.
But these are one-off games, except for the two matches they had. In the second one, the All Blacks gave it to them at home, right? So, New Zealand, and I'm saying this, New Zealand is not my first team.
Mm-hmm.
I live here. New Zealand, of course, the Springboks are where my heart is, because that's where I got up at early hours of the morning with my dad.
The bottom.
Yeah. But there's no doubt that New Zealand have been the best team in the world in the lot. I mean, if you play 10 times against New Zealand, there's no team in the world that's going to have 5 wins.
No team's going to get 5 wins.
5 games away. You think that another team in the world is going to win 5 times?
Away to New Zealand, probably not actually. It's coming to New Zealand and winning is very difficult. South Africa have done it in the last 2 years. But if you're going to come up with some sort of ranking system that's going to be stats based, Joshua threw up some ones which basically shows that New Zealand have got a 78.5 win percentage over the last year, whereas Wales have got a 90.9% win percentage over the last year.
So let me put it to you this way. Let me put it to you like this. There is only one team in the world that travels away from home and is a favorite.
Yeah, true.
Okay. So there's no other team in the world that goes to Twickenham and expects to win. There's no other team in the world that goes to Ellis Park and expects to win, or goes to Cardiff and expects to win. Doesn't matter where in the world they go outside of their home base, they are the favorites. There's only one team. That's it, right? Everybody else struggles away from home. The All Blacks win.
True, but if you're going to have a ranking system that's going to be done statistically, it's going to come down to those wins. New Zealand have had one of their worst years in probably about a decade now, with that 78% win rate, and so Wales admittedly haven't played New Zealand, but they can only beat the teams they've played, and they've done that.
Wales, but the crazy thing is, the last year includes a Northern Hemisphere tour, but it doesn't include a Southern Hemisphere tour. If Wales had come south in the last year, what do you think would have happened to them?
They did come. Where did they go last June? The rankings aren't purely on the last 12 months games. Every game gives and takes away points, but obviously if you go on a winning run of 14 games, which is what Wales did, then you're going to be gaining points and not losing them, and you're going to move up the rankings. So
but it just points out that the ranking system is flawed,
and there is never going to be a perfect ranking system.
We need to get Duck with Lewis and Stein into it.
Yes. And as someone said, oh yeah, Wales must have won more scrums than New Zealand recently. That's why they won. Other changes: South Africa jumped above England to go 4th, with England dropping down to 5th in the world this weekend, and France moved ahead of Scotland to go 7th, and Scotland down to 8th in the world. I still think what we can see from the world rankings is that we have the top 5. I think are the 5 that have got a realistic chance of winning at the Rugby World Cup, and I think outside of that, you're talking good luck. Other rankings that people would say are unfair. I mean, Argentina and Netting have dropped out of the top 10 now, and Italy as well, because they always play high-ranking teams. They never win. So again, there isn't a perfect answer, but it gives you a good feel for where teams are kind of at in the old rankings, relative to each other.
I would be very concerned if I was it's Wales, England, and Argentina in the one group, right?
No, Wales, Australia, and Fiji are in their group, and it's England, France, and Argentina.
England. If I know who could do the ranking. I'm very concerned about Argentina.
I know who could do the rankings. You ask someone like Paddy Power to do the rankings. You just look at the World Cup odds. That'll tell you who's the favourites are, who's ranked number 1, who's going to win what, or who they expect to win what. The house never loses.
So what are the 2020 odds on the Blues winning Super Rugby?
Oh, mate. we're like about $1, I think it is. I'm going to put the house on it.
Which house is that, Arshan?
Not this one, otherwise you don't have a bedroom when you come up to Auckland.
Yeah, don't put the one you live in on there. Yes, different house, please. Oh dear. Did you? Mickey Mouse moment of the week. This was fantastic. Did you see Ben May charging a penalty kick at the weekend?
No, he charged a penalty.
He charged a penalty kick. Absolutely. Actually, to be fair to him, he didn't look like he charged it. What he really did was thinking like, this is going over. I'm just running back to halfway. But he started as the player started running to kick it.
No. Close, Paul. What he thought was, this is a conversion. It's going over. I'll start running back to halfway.
Yes.
So, it was because it's a conversion, and I've got to run back to halfway because it doesn't matter what happens. So he was effectively charging it, but he was never going to actually try and charge it down.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but the fact that it's fantastic because he's a prop and he charged a kick, a penalty.
He was just running back to halfway. The funny thing is, the kicker missed it, so they had to retake it. He then got it over, and of course that meant the game was drawn. So 17-all. So basically, Ben May, lost the game by trying to just jog back to halfway.
I think you're being kind, mate. I think you're just being a prop. Somebody forgot to hold them before they turned them around.
It undermines my argument that the brains are in the forwards. Oh my golly! It reminds me of the story John Allen told of his favorite moment in rugby. So John Allen played for the Sharks, he played for Scotland, and he also played for the Springboks. And so he said they had a line-out call in the game, and I think it was a club game, and it was according to the first letter. So it would be Peanut 2739, and the P would be that it goes to the front of the lineout, right? And then an S, a word with S, whatever. So as he's walking up, he thought, I know when they won't. He said, I know the opposition won't get. And he called psychology. And he threw the ball in, and nobody jumped because there was no S in the calls, right? There was a P, but there was no S. So nobody got lifted, and the whole forward pack just watched the ball go over like a...
Oh dear.
Yeah. Doesn't help with the stereotype of the forward pack, does it?
No, not really. Just run through some of the results from last weekend. New Zealand beat Australia 36-0. We'll talk about that on the All Black session tomorrow night. Wales beat England 13-6. South Africa beat Argentina 24-18. Italy beat Russia 85-15, which I think really does show you that Russia are going to be well out their depth come the Rugby World Cup. And then France beat Scotland 32-3, which is a bit of a shock there. John, you said when you texted me earlier, you said, "Hey, do you want a South African view of the weekend on the show?" I've only seen the highlights, didn't watch the whole game, but South Africa versus Argentina, that was a lot closer than I was expecting the game to be honest. Argentina even led at half-time, I think.
Just remember, though, that the vast majority of those players were probably third choice, so of Springbok players.
Yep.
So there were only 5 players who were in the match day squad from the previous week in Argentina, and I think all of them were on the bench. So there was only 5 out of 23 that played on Saturday. So the vast majority of the first and second choice, at least the match day squad that Rassie would put out for a World Cup final, if it was this Saturday, were not playing. So he was trying out new combinations. He was trying out a few different options and trying to narrow down some ideas. So it was quite disjointed because they hadn't played much together. But he certainly did learn a few things. One thing he learned is that he's got the right wing that Steve Hansen's been looking for, and that's Spoo and Causy's 2 tries. I mean, the first one he had no right scoring. The second one, John Olomu would have been proud of scoring that try. At TVNZ on their website had it listed as potential try of the year, and his ability to finish is just amazing.
So you got like, excuse the pun, but you got wingers for Africa.
Yes, we do. We have the correct winger. Yes.
It's going to be very difficult choosing a back three for, or especially wingers for South Africa, because he played very well at the weekend. I mean, Dante's been playing very well. You've got
Dante's not going to make it to the World Cup.
no,
He's not recovered
really?
from his injury. So the one who scored all those tries last year against the All Blacks, he is coming back from injury, but their call is that he's not going to be match fit enough to be able to play in the World Cup. So it looks like he's not making the squad. Neither is Warren Whiteley, which is again somebody who's been blighted with injuries and is probably the best. Well, if they wanted to play a linking forward and back game, he's the best number 8 in the country and the best captain in the country. So I really feel for Whiteley. He's also looks like he's not going to make it. So even without Janchi, they still have a ton of wings. And I think Spoo Nkosi has probably made a case that he should be starting, and that may well be at the expense of Makazole Mapimpi, because Cheslin Colby has been a revelation for all the small stature. He's been an absolute revelation on the other wing.
So Herman suggests Colby to fullback, maybe to make room for him.
No, I don't think they're going to drop their current first choice fullback, Willie Leroux. I think they'll stay with him. That may be further down the line after the World Cup. That may well happen because Colby is playing in the Pro 14 at fullback. So, yeah, that may be further down the line, but I don't think that's going to happen in this World Cup cycle.
The Stephen has just put the TAB odds up for us, so I'll just put those on the screen. Canada, Georgia, Tonga, USA, all at 500 to 1 or 500 to 1.
That sort of sums up how good the rankings are, eh? When you got the number 1 ranked nation at 4th favourites according to a betting agency.
Yep, that's an interesting one.
But remember, odds are not just taken on what the bookies think who will win. They're also being affected by the money that's been put down. So the odds according to the money that's been taken in, right? So you can take an indicator when the book opens. When the book opens, you can see who the bookies think will win. But from then on, it's very much influenced by how much money has been put down.
Yep. Spreading the risk.
Yep.
Let's all go for USA at 501.
Is that their jeans they wear?
Yeah. It's all in the jeans.
All in the jeans.
I was just going to say, sorry. So before we move on, sorry, Paul. I was just going to say, so surely some of the administration at within South African rugby needs to look at where they sort of put games. So, like, they had the South Africa-Argentina game at Loftus, if I'm correct, and like there was 20,000 people there or something, or it was a very poor crowd. And it's just like, why wouldn't you sort of pick a small? Well, is there a small ground to play it at? Or look at ticket prices or something, especially when you know that's a warm-up game, all that sort of stuff. It's just like, well, yeah.
See, I'm scratching my head here.
Watch all the heat's coming out.
Look at it, the South African Rugby Administration, and my scalp is starting to itch. The problem with South African rugby is not quotas. It's not political interference. It's administration and leadership. It's not talent. It's the only country in the world that can challenge New Zealand for sheer athletic rugby talent, but not leadership talent, not coaching talent. And that's where New Zealand pulls away from South Africa. So the leadership of South African rugby is historically, going back decades and decades, is really poor, right? There were only how many tests in South Africa this year? Is it two test matches? And the two most powerful. What was the third one?
So it was Australia was the first one, wasn't it? No, so it was two, because then Argentina this time. Yep. So it's two.
So there's two test matches. And the two biggest stadia is where they gave the two test matches, and the most powerful, two of the three most powerful rugby unions, right? So they were always going to give it to Ellis Park because it's the biggest, bigger than Newlands, and the Blue Bulls are powerful. So that's it. It would make sense to send it somewhere else, but they're not going to, because they don't make decisions based on what's best for the game. They make decisions on what they think are best for themselves.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we've seen is that Argentina, and they took them to Nelson last year in New Zealand, and they get taken to the smaller grounds. It spreads the game around the country, and means fans who wouldn't normally get to see the All Blacks play live get the opportunity to. And there's no point putting Argentina on at Eden Park.
They could have sent that game to East London. They could have sent that game to Kimberley, which is where the Griquas are. They would have sold out. The whole town would have been, just having the Springboks there, the whole town would have been green. There would have been excitement the whole week. It would have been fantastic. But no, they're going to send it to Loftus. Because,
as you say, the administration's been the issue in terms of picking coaches and the like as well. So you've got Russie at the moment, who's obviously, I think he's got into the head of the All Blacks as well. So, very competitive matches, obviously tipped the All Blacks over last year, effectively won the game this year because, I see a draw and away is effectively, and the Springboks reacted as such as being a win. So then there's talk that Russie might not be there after the World Cup. Do they go back? Does that mean they end up back to square one?
Well, that's because Rassie's going upstairs, and he never was supposed to be coach. He was supposed to be director of rugby, and he's hiring his coach for it. So as he'll still be in control, he'll still be running things,
right?
But it'll be his coach. He won't actually be the hands-on coach.
I'm going to make a major name drop here, but around about this time, August last year, I had a conversation with Richie McCaw, and I asked him about Russie because he played against him as well as played for teams that were coached by Russie. And I asked him, what did he think Russie would do? Because remember, by that stage, Erasmus had been in charge for 6 months, maybe. And his description of Russie was he's a good man. He's going to make a big difference. And he's proven to be right.
Yeah, he's done a very good job there. And part of that has been he's gone in on his own terms by the sounds of things and told them, look, this is how I'm going to do it, or I'm not going to do it at all. And you need that kind of autonomy in those kind of roles. Steve Chu doesn't tell Steve Hansen too much about what to do, I wouldn't have thought. And again, this is if you're going to ask Razzie to come in and sort out, because he's not just been the head coach, he's also been talking and working with the Super Rugby franchises. He's been I think he's also been part of this whole the kind of salary cap things that they're bringing in, etc. Yeah, he's had a much bigger role than just being the coach.
And that's how it should be. If you want to get cohesion, you need to be working together. People often talk about the difference between New Zealand and the rest of the world being that the Super Rugby players, New Zealand Super Rugby players, are contracted to the Central Union, and they say, therefore, they have control over where they play. You don't have a John Smith and Bismarck Duplessis in the same team type scenario in a World Cup year. So you don't have two hookers playing in the same team in Super Rugby, your first and second, all that kind of stuff. Yes, but what people don't talk about is the fact that the coaches are contracted to the Central Union. So the coaches are not just keeping their job on performance; they're also keeping their job on producing All Blacks. Whereas in South Africa, if somebody doesn't win, they're gone. So they don't have, their first choice is not to build the Springboks. Their first choice is to keep their job. Right?
Yep.
Whereas here, it's not only about winning at Super Rugby level, it's also about building the All Blacks, because the coach is contracted by New Zealand Rugby.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you can see from this year's Super Rugby tournament that if the coaches were just basically all about themselves and their own job, they wouldn't follow through on the instructions of resting players and all that as well.
People asked, why did Foster keep it for so long when the best result he had was like a 65-something drubbing in a Super Rugby final against the Bulls? How did he keep his job for so long? The reason is he kept on producing All Blacks, and some of them were difficult characters that he kept on producing them and getting them ready, like Sione Loaki, Sivivatu with multiple shoulder injuries, etc. So he had some problematic injury players, he had some problematic behavioral players, and he kept on producing All Blacks. That's why he kept his job, and he not only kept his job, he stepped into the assistant coach position at the All Black.
There you go. And yeah, it is. But you've also got players who come back, like Fafita, I think, came back from the All Blacks camp and got told, look, they don't want me playing lock anymore. I'm not playing lock this year. Play me at 6, please. And the players also have a say in it as well. When these things come back, it's not just down to the when you're a senior player, you can do that kind of you have you have those sort of conversations. Looking forward.
There's very little doubt that's why Mackenzie moved to 10 at the Chiefs, because that's where the All Blacks wanted him to.
Wanted him.
Yep. It's also where he played all his age grade rugby as well.
Correct. Correct. And it's where, by the way, I think is his best position.
At 10?
At 10.
But he seems to be taking a while to get used to it, right? This is like, whereas at 15, just that extra space and that, he just seems to be able to make more use of the time and space that he gets at 15 and use it well. Not just the fact that he's
bad at 15, but I say if you persist with him at 10, that's where I think he's at his most dangerous.
Right then, we've kind of out of time. Let's have a quick look forward to next weekend and let me know which games you're looking forward to. We've got Tonga Western Force, Scotland France, England Ireland, Uruguay South America 15 or South America 15, and Canada versus Leinster. Anything jump out?
England Ireland.
Yes, well, yeah, England Ireland.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, that one, isn't it? It's to see, because this is Ireland's, and obviously Ireland put out an experimental side that put away Italy a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah.
But I think it's more, for Ireland, I think these games are much more about just getting fit and a little bit of match practice ahead of the Rugby World Cup. Whereas I think for England, it's much more about combinations. When you think players like Willie Hines have got 2 caps and he's going to be he's going to be on the bench or even starting at scrum half. I think they're totally different places in their development. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they both approach the game as much as actually play the game. And Scotland really needs to bounce back after that defeat to France. Yes, again, it was an experimental side by Scotland, but to have not even scored a try, I think they'll be very disappointed in that one. So those to me are the 2 big ones this weekend.
Was that Scottish team, Paul, was that, when you say experimental, were there a lot of fringe players playing?
Yeah, I think probably only half of those will actually make it onto the plane.
Okay. But like the Bok team.
Yep.
They need Hamilton Burr over there, eh, Paul?
They do need Hamilton Burr, or Hammy, as he's known to his mates.
Oh, I'm not mates. I better call him Hamilton.
Exactly. For those of you who don't know, go check out my interview with Hamilton Burr. It's on the old YouTube channel, post Waikato game. Yeah, good chap. Thank you very much, boys, for joining me. It has been an absolute pleasure. And John, we can't leave it this long between drinks next time, even if they are.
Okay.
And And Ashwin, well done. You've survived in a show that you were kind of a bit nervous about this evening, weren't you?
Oh no, I just thought I was going to fall in a big hole. But I just asked John lots of questions, and that way you look like an interviewer.
You already fell in the hole when you chose to support the Blues, mate. That's a big.
That's right. I can always hold on to 3 trophies. Three championships. There's 3 championships.
Scoreboard.
Fish and chip paper and all that, but still there.
Your kids weren't even born then, were they?
No. I'm barely born.
Anyway, folks, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Back tomorrow night with the All Blacks edition. And then obviously next week, we'll have the Mitre 10 Cup show on Monday. Arshwin doesn't know this yet, but I'll be asking him to host the Rugby Chat next Tuesday as I'm unavailable. And then we'll have the All Blacks edition next Wednesday. Join us 8 p.m. most nights of the week.